Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and we're here for the final FAQ, the final taboo list for Chapter 1 of Arkham Horror the card game. They're done with it, they've said. We're done with all the legacy cards. Anything going forward in Chapter 2 that doesn't work well with the old stuff, sorry, you're playing Legacy, so they're not going to go back and rebalance anything. We already knew that, but it's nice to have a final look at Chapter 1. So, this is just what the designers have done, right? We can agree or disagree or go on and make our own changes, and probably many people will, but it's a nice starting point to see how the designers have looked at the Drowned City cards that have been out for a year now. We've had one taboo list back in July of 2025, so this is another, this is like 7 months later, something like that, to give another assessment of the whole card pool. I think beyond all of the errata and FAQs, what people most want to see is just the taboo list. So let's zip on through everything. We'll just be looking at the red stuff later. And let's start with the taboo list. The list of taboos, as it were. This is a long document, isn't it? Which is another reason to move on, right, to chapter 2. Okay. I'll bring them up on the screen too. Some of these aren't really worth talking about too much, but Monster Slayer has been in the game for a long time, since Dunwich Legacy at level 5. And let's just bring it up to have something to talk about, right? It was always a tough ask. Is this something that I'm just trying to find through the list? Is this something that's worth 5 XP when you don't get any boost to your fight, and if you fail, it's not great? Did they even put these in any sort of order? I'm trying to find it, folks. So at 3 XP, is it something that is worth playing? I am not sure. It's not bad, right? At 3 XP, it's still a level 5 card, so it's stuck in Guardian 05. But I don't know. I don't know. Look, I like the defeat an enemy part of this card. I like Whispers of Doom, which is a level 0 card that kind of does the same thing in the Mystic class, but also has other costs associated with it. So it's not that easy to pass that test, which is a 3 willpower plus. Man, where is it? I'm scrolled through this whole darn thing, and they're not in any discernible order to me, although I might have just missed it. A lot of other changes here too. Okay, I found it. Here it is. And it's nothing special, right? So it's 1 cost. I kind of thought it was 0 because the level 0 one is 0 cost. But yeah, to unchain it to 3, I guess it's okay. I basically have said for a long time I'd like to try it at 3 just to see what that's like. And I think the card pool is so big though that even at 3, I think you have other things that you want to do. Unless you know the campaign. If you know the campaign has high health, non-elite enemies, Dunwich Legacy being one of them, then maybe this is pretty good. I think for Nathaniel Cho, upgrading the level 0 to this might actually be worth it. Usually it's no, because that's dealing 3 damage as it is. But if you think you're just saving this for 5 damage attacks, not bad. All right, well, that's the first one. Took me so long to find it. I hope the other ones are easier. I might just have to pause every time. Okay. Next one is Strong Armed. Oh, I did see that one. So this is +1 experience. So this is, I don't know. The card Strong Arm to me was always pretty busted. Like, I don't like these redraw effects. And I know not everyone agrees with me on that one. Here's the card. That this sort of idea to pull the token and then continue to redraw the token until you get something that's not failing the test. Autofail in particular, I think, is kind of nutty with this thing. Analysis at level 0 for Seeker class, I kind of feel is similar, but the clue drop is a bigger it's a bigger cost than just simply taking 1 damage. And yeah, this could be not good, right? You can take the damage and then die earlier than you were hoping. But usually the autofail, and you have to do this like first, right? It's not like you catastrophe where you see the autofill, then you cancel it. This is more of a you need to use it on a test where you might be not passing the test, so you're kind of redraw to pass. I think it's too good for the level. Level 2, I think, sounds fine. I think that's good. So you're always doing the extra damage if it's melee or ranged. Maybe you're getting the extra, taking the damage to redraw the token. I just feel like those sorts of effects are supposed to be in Survivor and not in Guardian or Seeker. I think at level 2, fine. Level 1 seemed too easy. Okay, that's that one. So I think this is actually a pretty good change. Then we've got the rods. The rod of Carnimagos, both level 0 and level 2 are chained to +2 experience. And the question is, why? Enemy management in this game is really important. If you're looking at these cards simply as a pretty good way of dealing with enemies every round, if you have a lot of curses in the bag, which is an ask, right? Like, you have to do that in this sort of deck. You can't just say, I'm putting it in for no reason. Um, that said, it's a pretty low bar to entry. Like, I have the same feeling about the Key of Solomon. Like, the healing, actionless healing on that card is so good. You can say, well, yeah, you're forced to playing Bless Curse, or at least Bless. And so what, right? Are those cards so bad that the actionless healing is making up for it? Probably not. Anyway, I think this thing is very, very good at what it does. And the upgraded one in particular lets you choose the rots and put as many as you want on them. This just solves enemies, right? You got a big, chunky enemy that you don't know what to deal with. Have it not attack. Ever. Have it not move. Walk away. Take your attack of opportunity. Walk away. Get some money for it. I mean, the rots are just so powerful that I think any of these attached to an enemy cards, Existential Riddle, anything with Beguile, right? With Alessandra. There's a few others of these that are just kind of dealing with enemies without taking actions, dealing with enemies and pushing them out of the location. Ashcan Pete's guitar, for example, parallel Ashcan Pete. All of this stuff really wrecks with the balance of the game. That's my opinion on this. Because you could be playing fair fighters and you're like, I have to spend ammo and pass tests all the time. And then this is just like, I wave the wand and now the enemy doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. So from that standpoint, I think that these are worth chaining by 1 or 2. I like that their access is off class 2, so like having them be level 2 is fine. However, I don't know if this is why this got changed. It's very possible that these got chained because of the shenanigans that you can pull with token manipulation that outclasses most other token manipulation in the game. So I don't need to go into this too much further. If you're not familiar, you're allowed to use this during a skill test. The tokens that you reveal from the chaos bag count as being revealed during that test. So if you're doing a Sixth Sense, if you're doing a, I mean, most particularly something like Eye of Chaos or Armageddon, these curses count because they are tokens that are revealed. And instead of fixing the problem, and I view it as a problem, maybe the designers don't, that this is mostly used by people who are trying to abuse that interaction. And they could fix it a number of ways. One is they could, fix the fact that you shouldn't be revealing these tokens at all. They shouldn't be counted as revealed tokens, but enough on reveal versus resolve. That's a unresolved issue already. It could just not be used during skill tests, right? There could be lots of other ways to fix this problem, and instead, just making it cost more XP is kicking the can down the road. So instead of getting this in scenario 2 or 3, you get it a little bit later. In an 8 scenario campaign, that's not that big of a difference. People generally just get the busted stuff anyways. I mean, clearly it's going to push out other things you could be spending the experience on. But in a full card pool, if you're intending on abusing this stuff, people are getting all kinds of XP anyway. I don't know. Like that, it's just that's not the solution I go for. I know that the taboo list tries to do chaining before mutations just because it's an easier thing to remember. You don't need to change any text on the card. It is simply something happens in between scenarios. But it's not the way I would do this. And it's a little sad that that's where we've landed with this card because I think the enemy management thing is really cool. It's just a bit too strong. Anyway, I don't like fun though, so that's the problem. Okay, quick shot, -2 experience. So this card is a level 3 card that's myriad, and that means that we are now down to this only costing 1 experience for all 3 copies. Where are you, quick shot? All right, here it is. So indeed, the level 3 part is still intact, so it's not available to anyone who can't take level 3 cards. But now you're only spending the 1 XP. Does it fix the card? Probably. It's cheap. You get 3 copies. It still costs the 2 resources. The cheap part was XP. Play it reducing its resource cost by 2. This is the part that just feels sad that you don't really get that reaction firing off that often because it's hard to draw it during your turn when there's an enemy to actually deal damage to. Um, sure, let's try it at 1 XP. That seems fine. I have no strong feelings about this card. I have not played it. I don't know who it goes into. Like Nathaniel Cho, I suppose I did try to play it in once, but yeah, okay. What's next? Bums Rush. This was the like surprise for most people. Like, why is this card on the taboo list? Let me bring it up. Yeah, it's an interesting card. So it's in the same vein as the cheap shot, slip away, breaking entering, etc., where you add one skill to another. In this case, you're doing it to do an evasion. So most like, I guess, slip away, which was also an evasion. Anyway, if you succeed by 2 or more, deal that enemy 1 damage. Cool. It's like a reverse cheap shot. If that enemy is non-elite, you may move it to a connecting location. I brought this question up before, and kind of everyone did. The question is like, if the enemy is non-elite, you may move it to a connecting location. Does that mean you have to succeed by 2 or more to do that? Does it mean you need to even succeed on the test? I think the ruling was that you didn't even need to succeed on the test to move it. And if that's the case, if they're doubling down on that, then sure, chain it for 1 XP. Otherwise, I mean, sure, it's better than cheap shot, kind of, but that card is fine. Like that, this is not doesn't have to be measurably better. Like breaking entering is the best one of all of them, but I've never seen that get chained. Anyway, like I don't know why they didn't just change this to errata to be you may move it if you succeed or something. I don't know. Like every time you do a new sentence in a list of effects, like they're supposed to be independent. I get it. That's probably not what the intention was of the card. Of course, I don't know. I didn't write the card. So, sure. Let's chain this to be 1 XP. I've never played the card and I don't know if this is going to make me want to play it. All right. Let's go to the next column here. All these other mutated ones are the same. So we get to the next page. Wither. We've got level 0 Wither, which changes this to a symbol token. And then level 4 is going to change to any symbol token, but also until the end of the phase instead of end of the turn. Let's check out those cards. I think that Wither always was in the shadow of Sixth Sense. In fact, the article talked about that. And then the new spell that we got, Cosmic Flame, also has this hybrid, like always use that, even if you're not spending any charges off of it. So like this was trying to do the here is your fight that uses willpower that you never need to use any charges for, and maybe you get a benefit. Probably not. And even if it does, like you're not dealing damage, extra damage, which is really what you want to do for the most part. Like if you had Shriveling and Wither out, it's just a big ask, right? So that's why I think the Cosmic Flame direction that they've gone in for chapter 2 is so nice. I don't think this saves level 0 Wither, which is just like, it's cheap, I guess. Level 4 Wither, I think, was always good. Um, Gosh, they didn't put the. Oh, here it is. Here's level 4. It was always good, but probably not good enough for 4 XP. It was an. I mean, I've used it before to great effect. It's just it felt behind the curve a bit. Okay, especially with the charge economy, right? They've printed so many things recently that just like slap charges down on anything. So the stuff that doesn't have charges feels like it's lacking a bit. Okay. So the difference here is now that any symbol, so elder sign is kind of important. I suppose the auto fail also. I mean, that was always the case that you could fail the test and it was helpful. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, the -1 health is fine. And this way you can kind of use your symbol manipulation stuff. It's good that Sixth Sense doesn't have this. Bless Curse, I think, works very well. But the biggest change, I think, is until the end of the phase. So you can butter up an enemy that someone else can then finish off. It doesn't just revert to extra health at the end of your turn. So I think this is cool. I'd spend 4 XP for this. Good change. At least worth trying out, right? Um, I think the other spells, like the 5 XP spell that we got out of the new core set, the Cosmic Flame level 5, is really good. This is, I mean, it's level 4. Be curious to sort of compare them a bit more, but yeah, not bad. All right, let's go to the next one. And this is on the other side. Oh, okay. Ravenous Myconid, Sentient Strain. This one is the Treachery one. I know I saw. Oh, there's more down here too. Okay. Let's find this one. And this one is the problematic one where people were canceling treacheries without spending any growth. When their shroud was 0, basically. So the text before was, when an investigator draws a non-weakness treachery card, if their location's shroud is equal to or less than Ravenous Myconid's growth. So now it's just less than. So if you're at a 0 shroud location because you're, how did this work? How do you get to be 0 shroud? I forget. Breach the door, I guess, is kind of the big one. But maybe there's other things you could do. Anyway, even so, it's just asking you to spend 1 more growth. So if you're at a 0 shroud, you have to still spend 1. I feel like they should have just made this say always spend 1. But I think this nerfs it a bit more, even for the higher shroud locations, right? So if it's a 4 shroud location, you got to have 5 growth on here. Okay. Or they could have like slapped a limit once per phase or something. I don't know. This is okay. I don't know if it really fixes these cards, which are kind of nutty, but it's a bit of a slap on the wrist. It stops the really most degenerate thing. It lets you still do a little bit of degeneracy, but all right. Next one is Spectral Shield. This one has changed to be first time that you take damage or horror. So it used to be every time the attached card takes damage or horror, you canceled it. This time it's just once. So you can't just, what was the combo? You could do a Bangle of Jinxes and just like keep taking damage, canceling it with something that, well, the Bangle of Jinxes itself could have a charge, and just ignore a 1 health enemy, a 1 damage enemy the entire scenario. A little silly. So this only lets you do it once per round. I wonder if this like opens up something else you could do where like you take, because sometimes it was a cost, like you wanted to take the damage. So I can't think of anything at the top of my head because something like Beat Cough or Field Agent, those actually exhaust. Um, Putting on a guard dog would maybe be okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't like this card in the first place. I think it's bad for the game. But this takes it down a slight notch. Just a slight. Okay. Let's move on to the next one, I think, which is Spiritual Echo. Let's go read what this says. This card gains fast. Play only during your turn. And now the reaction ability reads return spiritual echo to your hand at the end of your turn and gains limit once per round. I have no idea what this card said before. Let me go bring that up. Okay, my best understanding is the old one didn't have fast. So you had to spend an action to put this down, and all you were getting was the free activate later. So you're kind of deferring an action. Now you're getting an action, right? You're spending a resource to essentially get an action that you didn't have at all. The old one said return spiritual echo to your hand as soon as you did that activate. Well, the extra ability, I suppose. This one now says you return at the end of your turn. I assume that's because they don't want you to just slap it down again at the very same turn and then keep doing it. Got the limit once per round anyway. I need to think through this a bit more. Like, I think this is good. Does it let you do anything that you're... I mean, I think it's good because for 2 XP, you're getting an action, remote action. This is probably what it needed to be in the first place. Okay, I think this is good. I'm just trying to think through if there's some weird degeneracy that you're possibly able to do with this now. If you're returning this to your hand at the end of your turn, can you continue to do this reaction? The limit once per round is on the whole thing, right? On the whole reaction? Probably. All right, let's move on. I'm bored of this card. Library pass. Well, this was kind of foreseen from the very beginning. The change here is place attached asset in the bottom of your deck unless you spend one resource. The old one said spend the resource no matter what. If you didn't have a attached asset, sorry. So this is just buffing it, right? But I mean, it was admittedly weird, right? I guess it wasn't intended. I don't know. It was admittedly weird to say I have to pay for the book that isn't actually in play. Like on your opening hand, if you didn't have a book to put into play, a tome, then you still spent the resource, which wasn't probably the way it should work. This is makes more sense. Only checks if there's an attached asset. But this card's really good. And if this is why they tabooed the Necronomicon, like just made it forbidden, this is just saying, well, we really like this ability, we just didn't like the Necronomicon. Okay. I don't know anything else to say about this. This is a very, very powerful card. Yeah. All right. I mean, this kind of card can live, I think, in the card pool better if things like Scroll Secrets didn't exist. But here we are. All right, last one is On Their Heels. I like this one. I like this one being changed. The only difference is that it has, if On Their Heels has no leads, discard it. Otherwise, this was a slotless asset that was impossible to get rid of, but also had the limit 1 per investigator. So you had your second copy you spent 5 XP on in your hand. You're like, I guess I'm committing it for a few icons. And that's kind of sad. So this time it's going to have a use, right? You discard this, pick up the, it goes in your discard pile. It frees up that limit 1 per investigator slot. You play your new one. You continue to run around with your dogs. That sounds good. I mean, this feels like an errata, really. But there you go. I think that's the whole taboo list. Oh, no, it's not. There's one more thing that's been forbidden. And I suppose we should talk about that thing. It's down here. Burn after reading. It's finally over. This is a card that was designed, I guess it was 6 years ago by fans in conjunction with the designers, of course. And I'm glad to see it go. This is sort of the issue with a lot of players, I think, of card games, is that the first thing people think of is how can I abuse the hell out of the card? But let's talk about what it does just on the surface. It costs you one XP, 1 resource, which is extremely cheap. You get to exile, so remove from your deck forever. You have to replace exiled cards with level 0 cards for no XP. but it's gone. It's just you have to rebuy the card if you want to continue playing that card. Anyway, it's a level 0 to 5 card in your hand. You get 2 clues at your location, so it's a very, very cheap way of discovering testlessly 2 clues, avoiding any sort of consequences for investigation. If the exiled card was level 2 or higher, remove 1 doom from the current agenda, and then this exiles itself. So the question has always been, is it worth removing doom from the current agenda by getting rid of something kind of expensive in your hand? And I'm sure we've all been in the situation where you play a scenario, you've got stuff in your hand you just can't use, you don't want to use it, but are you doing yourself a disservice, I suppose? Are you making it harder the next scenario by having to rebuy that card if it was level 2? And I'm sure there's some circumstances that, yeah, you're okay with this. Like, you don't need that card anymore. Maybe you're trying to get rid of it. Maybe you're playing Deja Vu, but that's just not that likely. Um, Removing a Doom from the current agenda is great. It's really, really strong. You exile this as well, so you're kind of losing out on 3 XP. So most decks don't need this. Most decks can just fairly get clues and uh, deal with the Doom Clock fine. So you might as well just put better cards in your deck or play better rather than having to deal with this sort of issue. So I don't think it's hard to evaluate when this is really, really worth using for this effect. So most people ask insane questions about, well, what about Signum Crucis? This is a level 2 card that has been tabooed to cost you 0 XP because it was unchained and it was not good enough at level 2, but it's level 2. So what if I exile that, remove a Doom from the agenda, get the 2 clues, and get it back the next scenario for no XP because it's not really level 2. It is level 2, but it doesn't cost me 2 XP to replace. Yeah, I lose the burn after reading, but I can buy that one back. I mean, I don't know if people who are playing the taboo list should be doing that kind of nonsense, right? And the same question is true of customizable cards. Like, well, it's a level 5 card or something. If I exile the single copy, can I just put in the other copy later for free? Stuff like that, where it's like, does the exile mechanic really work the way that it should? Does it interact poorly with customizable and with unchained tabooed cards? Like, yes, like that was probably not part of the design. So I think designers are like, I've had enough. Let's make this forbidden so it's no longer a problem for those sorts of questions. I mean, originally on the taboo list, well, not originally, before this taboo list, it was campaign mode only because apparently enough people were playing this in standalone mode where it has no cost. I mean, you could always do it in scenario 8, and that's kind of cool. I mean, I guess you can just throw it in at the very end of your campaign knowing it has no cost. But as a designer, I don't know if that's what you really like. Like, sure, after you make a card and put it out there, people will find some ways to exploit it, but should it be this easy? And I guess the answer is no. Um, and I think the exile mechanic just has that problem in general, that it just doesn't have quite the right balance for this card game. It's either way too good or way too costly. And in my opinion, there's got to be a cost that people are willing to pay to actually play the card as written. And if not, then you haven't really designed the card properly. More on that in a bit. Okay, I think that's it for our taboo cards. The rest of this list is simply looking at frequently asked questions, the ultimatums and boons, I guess we could do right now, and other slight rule changes. So, with 30 minutes on the clock already, let's start doing those things. All right, we got 2 more ultimatums. Yeah. Okay, so this one here, Ultimatum of the Spiral. After investigators defeated, add 1 random base of weakness to their deck. Cool. I don't play with these. I think they're interesting. It's another way to sort of tweak the balance and say, I'd like this to be harder, the game to be harder. Most people probably don't want to do that. Again, you can self police and not play degenerate things. But I suppose if you really can't help yourself, you choose to make it harder in other ways. Like, I don't know. Difficulty in this game is kind of funny. I think it's fun to try these every now and then, but in general, I don't know. Ultimatum of Malevolence. This is actually kind of an unofficial thing already. You play on easier standard, so your chaos bag is set up with the numbers and symbols. Symbols are always the same. The numbers on easier standard. I guess maybe are there differences in the symbols at all in harder? I don't think so. Okay. But while playing, you flip the scenario reference card and use the hard expert side of the scenario reference card. This is sometimes called stand hard, where you're playing with the hard difficulty on the tokens. Cool. I think that's a nice thing just to say, hey, we're aware of this. Is it official? Like, I don't know. It just says here you can design your own too, which is what people do. We've got 2 more boons. This is the boon of the Morgan is when you would add a random basic weakness, you just do I have 3 that I've drawn. I pick 1 that I never want to add to my deck, and the other 2 you select at random. So you veto 1 essentially. That's pretty common. I don't do that personally. Sometimes I do, but usually not. Boon of Persephone. If investigator is defeated, they gain 3 additional experience. This is supposed to be like a consolation prize, I guess. Are people going to abuse that? I mean, it's a boon, right? Like, if you're choosing to make it easier, okay. I imagine just playing things like the I'll see you in hell, you get defeated, get 3 more XP. All right, sure. Refractions, these are to make certain campaigns or scenarios a bit harder. This one here at the bottom, the ultimatum of the brass crown for Path to Carcosa. If you heeded Daniel's warning, mine. Beginning the scenario, take 1 horror for each time you spoke, wrote, or typed the name of Haster since the end of the previous scenario. So the usual rule is that it's during setup and after. Okay. This is very silly. You're just gonna start the scenario with 8 horror on you. Anyway, ultimatum of the ambuscade, Forgotten Age. After each successful exploration, the performing investigator reveals a top card in the encounter deck. If it's an enemy, you draw it. Otherwise, it gets discarded. Interesting. More snakes, huh? That seems very difficult, but this game is very modular in that way, right? Cool. Cool. Ultimatum of Spoilage. This is at the Drowned City. You can't trigger abilities or assign damage to artifact assets. That's sad. That's like the whole point of them. If an item asset from the expedition encounter set is ever defeated or discarded, it can't be chosen during setup of the main campaign. That seems like a reasonable change itself. Not using the artifacts is tough, but some of them are crazy good. So, all right. Let's briefly chat about how the current environment is. They've been very clear that the current environment is not going to be what we have in chapter 2. This was just a beta. So like the core set's changing, the 5 starter decks are changing. Even this idea of the 3 most recently released investigator expansions, I don't know if that's actually going to be still the case. It might just reset itself entirely. It doesn't really, we're not going to have investigator expansions anyway, so this just might need to be revisited next month or so. I mean, these are all the names of the products. They somehow forgot about Film Fatale here, but okay. Let's go back up to the beginning. Let's go back up to the top. To the top. Okay. Rulebook errata. Add the following 2 bullet points to collection. The collection exists outside the game. Effects that search the collection cannot search in-game areas such as decks or set-aside cards. Okay. If a player owns multiple copies of a single product, their collection is still only defined as a single copy of each unique product they own. I think this is really just trying to get at the search the collection for whatever for memories of another life. People who wanted to play with 10 sled dogs can't. Um, it's still a little, you know, I don't know. Like if you're playing with multiple people, right? Like I brought my collection with me to my friend's game. Uh, I guess you're still only supposed to look at your own collection and not someone else's. Yeah, I mean, this stuff doesn't really matter that much. People who are trying to play with 10 sled dogs just play with three other players and take their sled dogs with teamwork. Permanent card cannot have its text box blank or treated as if it were blank. Um, I think there are some treacheries that do this, and maybe someone was trying to abuse what, like Karen Zobel or something like that, and I don't know because permanent cards. Well, I mean, most cards that have some kind of a text box that has a negative, like a forced effect, um, it's tough because when you design treacheries that are trying to remove all the good stuff, you end up removing all the bad stuff too. And I suppose permanents aren't. I mean, permanent is on the text box, so maybe that's part of the problem. Like, it's a keyword. And probably when you blank things, that part shouldn't get blanked. Oh, that's probably what happens. Like you stick it to a permanent card that has something negative on it, and then you blank it, and then you choose for Crypt Chill, you choose that card to leave play, which you otherwise couldn't do because it was permanent. Yeah, that's probably the problem. Mm. Oh, it also says that already. Card with permanent keyword can't leave play. It says it down here. Right, because then it's losing the. Okay. So probably things like permanent shouldn't have been keywords that are part of the text box. They should have been somewhere else. You learn some things after 10 years of the game. Okay. Achievement list from Drowned City. Uh, cool. I don't know what this is. Let's move on. Nothing here on page 4. Off the galley. Yeah, there was something about this in the article about how you could circumvent the Dream Eater scenario where you start on the Moonbeast galley. I'm not going to worry about this. I assume they got this right. I don't care too much. This one I do care about. The Oculus Xperia had wording that allowed you to reseal the same token over and over again, which was clearly not the intention. So this errata is like super important. After you succeeded a skill test, if no tokens are sealed here and you did not release a token, then you can seal the token. So that whole part here, if you didn't release the token, then you can basically seal a new one. I don't know how the original one got through with the original wording, but certainly it was obvious. Like you can't just put a 0 there and uh, seal it every time. I suppose there was some limitation if you took multiple skill tests, but still, um, okay. Version 2 or point 2.5. No, this is version 2.5. Oh my goodness. Okay, Katarina Soika. This is another problem where it was just when you would reveal chaos tokens is the language that replaces the token that you're revealing. The original way was when you reveal chaos tokens. So it's like, is this an additional token or what? I mean, again, the intent was clear. The wording was wrong. Parallel Lola, Samuel Blake. This card's first line should read replacement peril. So we've removed hidden. It's no longer a hidden card because hidden cards can't leave your hand except for the way that's specified on the card. And it didn't say anything about that. The idea was like, you're not supposed to tell people it's in your hand, but I don't know. I'm not even sure what peril does in your hand either, but there you go. Okay. That's not the last thing to talk about with that guy, by the way. Um, we have other clarifications under additional costs. And unfortunately, it's not just in this part of the FAQ, it's in a bit more. All right. Additional costs are not paid when a mandatory instruction, such as in the campaign guide or on the back of an act or agenda card, requires investigator to resolve the effect. That feels like how it used to be. Forced effects, I think, aren't requiring you to do extra costs, but they found out that that was a problem with Amanda, who was a forced effect, and then could get by with justify the means without putting curse tokens in. So I think this is trying to uh, do that without saying the word forced effect. I believe that's true. Um, yeah, that I think that's what's changed here. Okay. I don't know if that's the best way to change that, but that is the way they've done. Um, Limbo. It's not a physical game area. While in Limbo, a card is typically placed on the table. So Limbo is supposed to be like when you commit a skill test, a card to a skill test, you resolve a treachery, that sort of thing. Like, where is that card? Um, until FAQ 1.23, they didn't really tell you where these cards were, what Limbo even was. So now we know that. We've known it for a while. Now they're just adding here, while in Limbo, a card is typically placed on the table to show that its effects are currently being resolved, unless it is attached to another game element, in which case it remains in its current position. Okay. Um, I'm not sure what that's helping us with. Okay. 1.31, gaining, spending, and forfeiting actions. This is the thing that people were about, and I still am, about unused actions. But look, they've codified it here. Any unused actions are forfeited at the end of investigator's turn, and you can't spend them outside of your turn afterwards. You could beforehand if there's something that lets you do it. I don't think there's. I mean, it's a whole thing. I don't know why we need this. Like, it used to be that you could save your actions to spend them to pay additional costs, like with the albino penguin. Now you can't. All right, let's move on. 1.32, costs and restrictions during the initiation sequence. This one is supposed to be about Spectral Razor. They want to make sure that people know that if the effect on my card allows me to affect the initiation sequence, then it does. I think this is already kind of known, um, at least by intent. Like stuff like Runic Axe, which lets you move and then be able to fight an enemy, right, at that new location. That was always kind of like, can you do this? Well, clearly you can, but what allows you to do this? So now they've just sort of said, if the card or ability in question itself modifies those restrictions or costs, then we consider them to be fulfilled. I think this is okay. Like the rulings on fence, etc., kind of have this time warpy quality that things that you do during that resolution of the card, like the effect of the card, allow you to pay for the ability to use the card in the first place. Okay. Enemy attachments with victory X. Oh, just to be clear, like people thought that Spectral Razor doesn't work because how can you engage an aloof enemy if you're not allowed to fight aloof enemies? Only playing the card with the fight uh, only written on it, like it should also say engage fight or something, um, would allow you to do that. A little bit hand wavy here, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like you play the card that and it kind of means what it does. Like obviously there's a line. And some people are reading so much into the language, and sometimes I do too, on the card to say, like, this is what this card does and this is what it doesn't do. So the designers should do the best they can to avoid those sorts of pitfalls, and writing things into the rules, I think, is the best way to do that. Okay. Enemy attachments with victory X. If a card, you can't see this yet. If a card with victory X is attached to an enemy and that enemy is defeated, the attachment is placed in the victory display instead of the usual out of play area. Okay. Honestly, I don't even know what an enemy that, like, what's a card with victory X that gets attached to an enemy before the enemy gets defeated? I don't know. There's probably something out there. Like Yorick's thing is different, I think. Okay. Standalone scenario setup. If there's no instructions for how to do the standalone mode, then use the beginning of the campaign setup and then optionally increase skulls, cultists, tablets, and elder things, or any campaign specific symbol tokens. So do whatever you want. If you're playing Jim Culver, add 4 skulls. Why not? Weaknesses with player card types. Unlike other player cards that are not affiliated with any class, weakness cards with player card types like asset, event, or skill are not considered to be neutral cards. All weaknesses, regardless of the primary card type, do not interact with player card class system or investigator's deck building options. Huh. Yeah, so Samuel Lake, the ally that is for Parallel Lola. Maybe we should bring him up. Okay, I'm back. So let's look at this again. We've got Samuel Blake here. Weaknesses with player card types. So this is not a neutral card. Is the issue here? So Lola can only play things that are in her role, but I think it's okay to play weaknesses. I'm pretty sure. So if we look at her rules on roles, she can only play cards, commit cards. This is the original Lola. Commit cards, skill tests, blah, 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 neutral cards or cards that have a class match her role. This restriction only applies to player cards, not to encounter cards or weaknesses. Okay. I mean, Samuel Blake is a player card, but he's also a weakness. So I guess this still works. You can still play him. What do we need this for? So if you use Crisis of Identity, and it says discard 1 card in your hand or play area of your current role. Maybe that's the problem. Like if you're in neutral, they don't want you to discard. Maybe you can't discard. Well, it's a player card type, right? Maybe that's it. Mm, I don't know. Maybe like maybe that's the problem, but you can't ever choose to discard weaknesses, so that shouldn't be the issue. If you discard the top card of your deck, if it's a weakness, it already tells you to switch your role to neutral. I'm not sure on this one. I'm not sure what it changes, and maybe someone else has figured this out already, but I don't know. Um. Oh, hey, did this fix the additional costing? Did it fix his forced ability for Parallel Lola? Like right now, the forced ability. Ah, that must be it. Yeah. The earlier thing where it says about forced abilities. Yeah, additional costs are not paid when a mandatory instruction requires an investigator to roll effect. So you still have to pay uh taking a horror when you switch Parallel's roll through the forced effect. Okay, okay. Maybe this is okay. Maybe we've done this correctly. All right, let's get rid of this. So otherwise, I don't really know. All right. 1.36 scenario effects on investigator decks. A scenario may instruct an investigator to add a card to their deck. Unless this instruction includes the word may, you have to. Yeah, I know that. Not restricted by investigators' deck building options. Okay, I mean, it's nice to be explicit. I have no problem with this. Purchasing player cards with deck building effects. Yeah, this is another one where I think people knew this, but it's nice to codify it. So if the card has a an effect to the deck building, like the size, then you get to immediately have that come into effect. So adaptable allows you to swap level 0 cards immediately, etc., etc. Okay, fine. Oh, variable difficulty skill tests. I know people ask this question a lot, and it's nice to have it like, here it is, folks. But this is follows from the rules. Like, I don't think this is necessary as its own thing, but let's have it here. Sure. When performing a skill test whose difficulty is modified based on another aspect of the game, that difficulty changes whenever the corresponding aspect status does. So essentially, it's up until step 6. That's where you determine whether or not you succeed. So if something cares about how many cards you have in hand, and then you start committing things, this is the example here in the FAQ, and that changes the difficulty of the test. It can do that even. So the test difficulty never gets locked in. It's only this type of the skill test that gets locked in at the beginning of the skill test. Yep. Everything till step 6, basically. Okay. Revealing and flipping locations. If a location is revealed, then leaves play, then later re-enters play, like in Depths of Yoth, and then it's revealed again, you get clues on it. Basically there's no memory on locations unless it's a location that has 2 revealed sides. It flips, it doesn't leave play, then you don't replenish clues. Cool. All right, that's kind of known. Let's keep going. As if. Oh man, there's more as if stuff. Unless otherwise stated, an investigator's threat area is not inherently altered during the resolution of the indicated ability or action. For example, if you are engaged with an enemy prior to resolving an ability as if you are at a connecting location, that enemy remains engaged with you and will still make attacks opportunity even though it does not leave your shared actual location. They've been trying to do a lot more pinning down of as if, like what part of the physical um, game state is altered. It already had said that you don't move your mini card or anything else. And I guess they're just saying that the threat area doesn't change either. I'm not really sure that that's necessary to say, but I think they just didn't say it in this earlier bullet point about enemies at the new location don't move to your threat area. So yeah, okay. Interpreting you when taking or being dealt damage or horror. Earlier, this said only damage. Now it says horror as well, which is hilarious that I never noticed that before. But clearly, the idea that horror is a type of damage has leaked into all of our brains. So, yeah, now this just says damage or horror. And I think that was just everyone played it that way. I don't think anyone, clearly someone, but I had never even considered that they meant only damage and not also horror. That's really funny. 2.16, farthest from all investigators. I hate doing this calculation, so now they've changed a bit. Some card effects instruct investigators to put a card into play at the location farthest from all investigators. This is determined by finding the location from which the shortest distance by movement to any investigator is the highest out of all eligible locations. Okay. So before you had to like sum up everything from every investigator or something, now you just find who's the furthest away individually, and then pick the highest of those. So if some enemy would be 3 locations away from you, but only 2 locations away from me, then it is going to be the location that is furthest from you. It's still some kind of calculation because you have to try this from multiple locations, but it's usually pretty obvious if it's like between 2 locations. Okay. And the example down here is probably the one you just want to read when you actually have to do this in practice. Okay. Treachery and event subtitles. This was here already. They're just telling us now that treachery and event cards don't have a header for the subtitle. I think we had that already. If the title of a treachery or event card contains one or more words in parentheses, that is considered subtitle. What did it say before? Did it just add event? It probably added event. Oh, it's because of Parallel Lola, right? Because her stuff says, I mean, I have it right up here, I think. Her stuff says, like leading lady something or other. right? Like this is leading lady final girl. That's different from leading lady enchantress, but these are all considered to be um, copies of one another. Okay, they're basically the same card. Cool. Ignoring all costs. Oh no. Some cards, like Knowledge is Power or Word of Woe, allow an investigator to play a card or activate an ability on an asset, quote unquote, ignoring all costs. These effects only ignore activation costs, such as activation, actions, resource costs, spending uses, etc. In other words, anything written before the colon. That part was there already, I think, or somewhere. They do not ignore additional costs that must be paid when resolving that ability or otherwise written after the colon. You have to pay these as well. Effects or costs that exile a card or remove a card from the game cannot be ignored. I don't know what's different compared to before. Maybe it didn't have anything about exiling. Essentially, there are certain costs that they never want you to ignore. Unfortunately, the game says ignore all costs. So, how are you supposed to know what are the costs that I can ignore and what are the ones that I am not allowed to? And the language in the FAQ does make it clear. The language on the card says not that. So, look, if you're playing the game with a friend who doesn't know the FAQ at all, and you tell them you can't ignore that, and they say, "What do you mean? It says ignore all costs." And you say, "Well, not all costs, actually." Yeah. Anyway, I guess I don't have much to say about that, but it's fair to do this because there are some things that you just shouldn't be able to ignore. Like exiling is kind of stupid, right? Um, but maybe the words need to reflect what the thing actually does, even if it makes the text longer. Synergy and neutral cards. Cards with the synergy trait do not consider neutral classless player cards when identifying that. We know this already from Edge of the Earth. This was in that uh, pamphlet that came in that expansion. Memories of Another Life. Oh god, this card. This can only search the collection for the chosen card. Can't search any in-play or out-of-play area, and it cannot create a new copy of the card that does not exist physically within your collection. And remember, collection is only the stuff that came in the one copy of the product. And by that, we mean the revised core, not the original core, which only had one copy of things. Okay. You can't search for a copy of a customizable card that you've already upgraded since it's no longer level 0. It can play a level 0 card that has been chained via the list of taboos. That's funny. I mean, I guess that is correct by the rules, although they're making the rules up here. It doesn't have to be right. So sure. Go ahead and take your drawing thin. I mean, this thing costs 5 XP already. It seems okay to do that. A card played by Memories of Another Life can be placed in the victory display or any other eligible out of play area, like your discard pile, by an ability or game effect. Sure. I think this makes sense. The problem I always had with Memories of Another Life is whose card is it, right? You're taking it from your collection. Usually when you have things that are not starting in your deck, um, and those cards get removed from play, it gets removed from the game. And this is basically saying, I think, I think it's saying this is like if you take Leo DeLuca, assign him his 2 damage and 2 horror, he doesn't get removed from the game. He should go in the discard pile for the rest of the game itself. It's not obvious from. I mean, it's probably the intent. Like that's the most typical way people should play that, I think. But from the rules, where people probably miss the whole idea that a ally that doesn't start in your deck but does enter play in your, or you take control of it. If it leaves play, it leaves the game, it doesn't go into your discard pile. So, like, why should Memories of Another Life be different? Because they are telling us that. And that's fine. They forgot a capital letter here. Anyway, massive enemy attacks. I think this is also, like, known. Massive enemy that's ready during the enemy phase attacks each investigator at its location, one at a time in an order determined by the lead investigator. Because it is engaged with each investigator at its location, these attacks occur outside the standard timing of enemy attacks, which are usually resolved in player order. Right. So you can do it in any order. That's, I'm pretty sure, known. While resolving in massive enemies' attacks, if an investigator becomes engaged with an enemy, that investigator will be added to the list of targets. That's cool. But this is the last part that I think wasn't 100% clear, although I think that's the way people played it, with Daniela Reyes in particular. If a massive enemy exhausts before resolving all of its attacks, it does not initiate any remaining attacks. Good. Good to say that. Card type categories for key cards. This is the keys from the Scarlet Keys. A key card changes its card category based on its bearer or controller. When attached to investigator or a story asset controlled by investigator, it's a player card, otherwise it's a scenario card. Sure. I can't think off the top of my head why that matters, but I'm sure it does. That was a lot. Let's keep going. We have this giant list of FAQs, and to me, I don't think these are supposed to be like new rules. They're really just like things you should have been able to determine from the rules themselves, but are formatted in a way that is likely to be questioned by people. So that's my philosophy on these. That might not be true. There's a long list again. Chapter 2 just needs to uh, think about these, add them to the rules reference such that these are no longer a question, and wipe the slate clean. Oh my goodness. Okay. So what happens when an enemy with the patrol keyword is already at its target location at the start of the enemy phase? I assume it doesn't move. That's correct. When playing testing sprint, do I stop investigating when I fail one time or when I finish succeeding or failing to investigate each eligible location? Yeah, so like, are you supposed to just investigate everything and then... What? Or when I finish succeeding or failing to investigate each one? No, you're supposed to stop. Yeah. I feel like that's too cheesy if you... Anyway. Yeah, if you fail one investigate test before you investigate all of them, you don't continue investigating. Okay. I can sort of see where the question comes from, but I think the answer should be obvious. Can George's hand size be modified further beyond what his ability states? Yes, that is a very good thing to put here because this was a question even on release that was not ruled on with a definitive answer. It was kind of a yes, but we might change that in the future. So something like laboratory assistant, arcane enlightenment, etc., adds to the number of that is your hand size. That number is kind of at a base the number of face down cards beneath him. Yeah, no, good question. What happens if the Lost Homunculus attempts to exile a card from their deck? You can't add any more cards. And they have no legal deck size to maintain. That's funny. That's down here. Okay. If I resolve the surge keyword on treachery, can I still play Fool Me Once and attach treachery to it? Yes. Resolving the surge keyword on a treachery counts as resolving an effect of the card. Yeah, that makes sense because... Wait. Yes, that's right. So when you ward a protection a surge card, it still surges because you're only canceling the revelation effect, but surge is an effect too. Okay. Oh no, it's the exile question. And there's a few of them. I don't want to read these. But if you care about exiling customizable cards, then you can read these. I don't want to read them. Okay, does Fox Mask replenish an offering when an enemy moves with me? For example, if I am engaged with an enemy and take a move action. No. It basically means that you are leaving a location and that location you left has an enemy in it. Ambiguous with the wording, but you know what? Try writing rules or any sentences that don't have some other possible interpretation. It's just that they need to have answered these questions in the FAQ in the expansion that it was released in. That's my opinion there. Does an enemy exhaust when an effect causes it to attack as if it were the enemy phase? Yes. What about if it doesn't say that? No. I kind of wonder about this for chapter 2. Clearly, they've written cards around this being the case. But I wonder if they should just dump the as if it were the enemy phase. Like, what is the point of that? It feels like it's the as if it were your turn. Is it to try to say that things can only happen because they're in the enemy phase? I don't know. Like, it just seems simpler to say the enemy attacks you. End of story. If they want it to exhaust, why don't they just say that? Do they want all the other stuff, the baggage that comes with the enemy phase attacks to be there? Like, I don't know, Daniela or anyone, I guess, reacting with that? I don't know. Just seems like extra text that is not necessary. Well, it causes more confusion than is necessary. Like, if they want to exhaust, say it. Otherwise, don't write this text. Maybe there's something else that could happen as if it were the enemy phase. I mean, I understand. It usually says like they hunt and attack as if. So it's like two things that are happening. But we could just say resolve the hunter keyword. Okay. If I initiate a skill test at a given location, then trigger an effect that causes me to move before that test finishes resolving, what happens to the skill test? This is a new thing. Once you initiate a skill test or ability, you resolve that test or ability as completely as possible, regardless of your location, unless another effect cancels or interrupts it. So if you attacked an elusive enemy, you could attack the same enemy with 1-2 punch with the card's second fight, even though level 0-1, even though it is moved to a connecting location. I forget. One of them, level 0 or 5, says you can fight that enemy again versus you can fight again. So they're just telling us that even if something moves or if you move, you're still kind of resolving it at the original location. All right. I mean that's fine. I think they could fix this in other ways, but um, okay. If I play or take control of another investigator's customizable card, does that card retain its upgrades? Yes, you still control the card. The customizable cards are linked with their um, owner's customizable sheets. If an effect allows me to play a card at no cost, does that mean all resource costs, additional costs, etc., are ignored? No. No. Playing a card at no cost only ignores its resource cost. Is that confusing as all hell? Yes. Yeah, so people are sad about essentially two things: memories of it in their life, not being able to play doubles because, I mean, you can, but it sort of weirdly interacts with the whole can I spend actions outside of my turn? Like, I still don't understand that rule. I think that rule is unnecessary, especially given this. So if I have memories of it in their life for bank job, if I have an extra action to spend at that point, then I can spend it, I think. If it's after my turn, I definitely don't. If it's before my turn, not sure. Um, so that's one thing, that you're not ignoring the additional cost of extra action or whatever it might be. And then there's Summoned Hound and its ilk, where playing a card incurs some additional cost like a weakness. And, we're here. Let's just talk about that card for a second. It's not the only card that has additional cost to play something, but clearly this card is supposed to have a weakness, right? Some downside. It's a free trigger ability to fight or investigate at a base of 5 with 3 meat soak. It's really good. And it's busted in a lot of investigators where you can do this more than once, maybe even often, like in Charlie. So people have said, well, how do I play this card without paying the cost? The cost being the Unbound Beast. This guy takes over your Summoned Hound. You got to fight him instead, and then you're kind of SOL afterwards. The design of this card, in my opinion, is extremely weak because people don't want to play this card with the weakness. They only play this card if you can use a chance encounter to put this card into play, so you circumvent additional cost to play because you're not playing, you're putting into play, or um, you're ignoring additional costs with stuff like, well, there's not much, but there's the new motivational speech level 4 does this, and the shot caster also has a play a card with no at no cost. Um, so yeah, again, if you interpret things like this to be at no cost, to be no additional costs in addition, right? Ignoring all costs, I suppose. Um, then you can do this, and it's very strong, and then you never have the negative part of the card. But again, why are we fixing that particular problem by defining at no cost as resource cost? Maybe it's always been that way. We will never know. But it's not intuitive. Clearly, people are trying to find these exploits. What they have to do is they have to fix summon hound. Like, again, I apparently don't like fun, but this card needs to have the weakness. Like, this is the whole point. Instead of cheesing out this for absolutely no downside, if the card is never played with no downside, then the card is broken, right? Make it so, and this is my own personal taboo list fix for this, make it so you defeat this thing and you get this one back. Now there's a push-pull, right? Okay. So I have no problem with at no cost meaning no additional cost. My problem is that they need to actually say that somewhere other than this part of the FAQ. It should have said this like all along. Uh, and it's just confusing. If they want at no cost to mean no resource cost, then say that. But FFG is a bit allergic to erratas, and there aren't that many cards. But let me show you another card that is deeply frustrating in this respect. And that is the motivational speech card. I guess that is worth talking about. That it's got multiple things on it, right? It's got both versions of ignoring costs. Here it is. This says choose investigator location. That investigator may play an ally asset from their hand at no cost. Again, this means no resource cost. Then that investigator may trigger an action or free triggered ability in that asset, ignoring all costs. So those two things mean kind of different things. The context is a bit different anyway. But man, the cards just should say exactly what they do and not have to have us look up what the shorthand really refers to. So um, it just should say like reducing its cost to 0, or I don't know, whatever it might be is the best way, in my opinion, to tackle these kinds of problems. Should have said that all along, but I think otherwise we're trying to convince people that at no cost means something that is not an intuitive reading. Uh, I, I know, I know. Or they needed to have defined this about 5 to 7 years ago. Question: if I use Katarina Soika's ability while revealing tokens with Eyes of the Dreamer, does Katarina ability, can I use it to ignore unresolved tokens? Does that combo with Eyes checking ignored tokens for a match? Yeah, that seems to make sense. How does Glimpse the Void interact with other abilities that reveal tokens? You have to, this is Agatha's weakness. Reveal and resolve an additional token on top, reveal and resolve. Oh my god. One additional token on top of any you would normally reveal and resolve by or for the test or effect. This token is targeted, chosen, or ignored separately from the other tokens revealed by for the test or effect. It'd be nice to have a better understanding of the token manipulation stuff. Maybe we'll get that in the future. I don't think we have it. I think we've got lots of little pieces that maybe help. But I would love for the FAQ to really walk us through some examples. There's a bit out there with Olive McBride, like the original one. I think with the number of things we have today, with Agatha in particular, I think we could see more. I think we could stand to have more of a like walk me through exactly how these three things would interact. I think that's it. Oh, maybe we've got some stuff from scenarios. Preludes. They are considered to be the same game as the scenario that follows them, Only resolve set abilities once per prelude and scenario pair. Yeah, that's kind of how we've understood this before. But, okay. Anything else from Drowned City? Nope. Oh man, hour 15. That is so long to talk about this document. Okay, so like overall, I'm positive on this. I'm negative in the sense that it is the last one. Because like, what are all the things that they didn't do? We never got anything about Seekers here, other than the Ravenous Myconid. We didn't get anything about, uh, I don't know. Like, we all have our personal wish list, right? I would love to have seen something like cryptic research get some kind of taboo. There's a lot of broken things that they didn't touch here, and maybe even like pulling all in off the taboo list or changing it to be uh, once per round. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that they could have done and they didn't. And I think we all have our own personal list there, and that's fine. Maybe like this is just a starting point for you and your group for playing Legacy. You can't ask them to do everything because this stuff is no longer in print. It's probably not worth their time. I hope they've learned a lot going forward, because this is 10 years of data. This is so much to learn from, like what worked and what didn't. And I don't blame them for not getting it right all the time, but I hope they have their own list of like what are things to avoid in the future. Which is a fun exercise, that the taboo list and the FAQs, right? You never know when you make a product how it's going to be received, how it is that people read things that you wrote. Um, you'll never know that until you actually throw it out to the public. So that this kind of document is necessary. It's always a question of how do you learn from that? How do you move on from the, I hate to call them mistakes, but like the issues that were unresolved. Um, and listening to feedback, I think, is part of that. And I don't know what feedback they were listening to with Bums Rush, because that was a big surprise. Anyway, that's it from me today. It's fun and exciting to go through. I love the rules. I love all this stuff. I think it's really interesting. And I have a lot to learn from it too. Like, I didn't know about some of these things that must have caused them to have to write some kind of FAQ about it, because we don't know. We don't know how many questions they get sent in and what those even are. And I hope that kind of thing changes to give a better idea for people like me. How do people interact with the game? Cool. That's it for me today. I'll see you guys again real soon.